They kicked a black CEO out of his own hotel, calling him a threat. But 10 minutes later, he walked back in with the deed in his hand and fired the entire staff on the spot. Stay with us, because what happens next is more powerful than revenge. It's a masterclass in leadership, respect, and quiet domination. Make sure you watch till the end. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real stories that flip the script in the most unexpected ways. The sliding glass doors whispered open as Julian Carter stepped into the grand lobby of the Carrington Elite Hotel, a sleek, modern palace of marble, chandeliers, and cold glares. It was nearly midnight. He had just flown in from a grueling overseas board meeting. No entourage. No designer suit. Just a hoodie, joggers, and worn sneakers. He liked to travel low-key. He also liked to test his own staff without warning. The front desk agents barely glanced up. One whispered to the other and laughed. Julian stood there, patiently, waiting to be acknowledged. 30 seconds. A full minute. Nothing. He finally cleared his throat. Evening. I'm here to check in, Julian Carter. The younger receptionist, Tyler, arched an eyebrow. Name again? He asked flatly, already disinterested. His eyes scanned Julian up and down. Hoodie. No luggage. Black. Sir, we're a private luxury property. We don't accept walk-ins. Julian smiled calmly. I made a reservation under my name. You'll find it. Tyler didn't check. Instead, the night manager, Sandra, appeared from the office behind them. A tall, stern woman with clipped heels and a clipboard, she surveyed Julian with disdain. I'm sorry, but this hotel doesn't allow loitering, she said firmly. If you don't leave, I'll have to call security. Julian blinked. Loitering? I'm a guest. Sir, she cut in, voice sharp, this hotel serves professionals, diplomats, and executives. Not random individuals who wander in off the street. Her eyes lingered on his hoodie like it was a threat. A bellhop in the corner turned pale. He recognized Julian from an internal company newsletter. But he said nothing. Sandra tapped her pen against her clipboard. This is your final warning. Julian took a breath, stepped back, and nodded slowly. Understood. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd just protected their precious brand image from someone who didn't look the part. But what they didn't realize, what would shake this hotel to its core, was that the man they just humiliated didn't just have a reservation. He owned the entire building. As security approached to remove him, Julian stepped outside into the warm night air and pulled out his phone. The game was about to change. And in 10 minutes, this entire staff would learn exactly who they had just tried to kick out. And the clock had already started ticking. The lobby doors parted again, this time for security. 2 bulky men in pressed black uniforms flanked Julian as if he were a trespasser, not the owner of the multi-million-dollar property they were sworn to protect. Guests lounging by the lobby bar turned to watch. Wine glasses paused mid-air, curiosity sharpening into judgment. Phones discreetly lifted to record. Sandra folded her arms, wearing a smug grin like it was part of her uniform. I asked you to leave. You refused, she declared loud enough for everyone to hear. Now you're causing a scene. Julian raised his hands, calm but firm. I wasn't causing anything. I simply asked to check into the room I paid for. But it's clear I'm not welcome here. Tyler snorted under his breath. You paid for a room here? Sure, bro. Julian looked him in the eye. You might want to hold that tone. But Tyler had already turned his back. Sir, the older of the 2 security guards said, gently placing a hand on Julian's shoulder, we're going to have to escort you off the premises. We don't want trouble. Julian didn't resist. He smiled. No trouble at all, he said, his voice silk smooth. But I want this entire moment documented. He pointed at the security camera above the front desk, then at the 3 guests openly recording on their phones. Sandra scoffed. Go ahead. We're just doing our job, keeping the lobby clear of threats. Julian tilted his head. Threats? You showed up unannounced. No luggage. No suit. No identification. You refuse to leave when asked. That's enough for us, she snapped. The bellhop in the corner finally stepped forward, nervously wringing his hands. Ms. Sandra, I think you should. Quiet, Marcus, she barked without looking at him. Let the professionals handle this. As Julian was walked out under the glare of crystal chandeliers he helped design, the weight of the moment hung in the air like fog. No one apologized. No one paused to ask his side. To them, he was just a black man in a hoodie who didn't belong. What they didn't realize was that they didn't belong anymore either. Because outside those doors, Julian Carter was already dialing the number that would bring the real professionals. And Sandra's reign over that front desk was down to single digits. The night air outside the hotel was thick with silence, broken only by the click of Julian Carter's phone unlocking. No anger on his face. No frustration. Just calm precision. He walked over to a bench near the valet, sat down like a man waiting for his ride, not a man who just got kicked out of his own hotel. He scrolled to a contact named Executive Ops, Priority, and hit call. 3 rings. A groggy voice answered. Mr. Carter? Everything all right. Julian glanced at the hotel entrance where the manager and security guards still lingered, unaware of the corporate earthquake about to hit. Activate Operation Clean House, Julian said, voice low but clear. The line went dead silent. Copy that, the assistant said with renewed alertness. Regional Director is 10 minutes out. Legal is being looped in now. Full compliance. Full, Julian confirmed. I want everyone involved documented. Pull the footage. Flag any witness recordings being posted online. Already going viral, sir. Twitter's lighting up. Julian smiled. Of course it was. He hung up and leaned back, watching the glass doors open and close as guests and employees filtered in and out. To them, he was invisible again, just some guy in streetwear loitering near valet. But behind the scenes, the gears of his empire were grinding into motion. Across town, cell phones buzzed awake. Legal advisors jumped from beds, regional managers rerouted their night plans, and the Carrington Elite Headquarters Crisis Response Team went into red alert. Inside the lobby, Sandra was back behind the desk, laughing with Tyler like they'd just swatted away a fly. I mean, did you see his face? Tyler chuckled. Probably gonna write a Yelp review like it'll matter. Sandra rolled her eyes. These people are all talk. You give them one rule and they start screaming about rights and racism. Like, please. What she didn't know was that every second of her behavior had been captured. By guests, lobby cameras, and most damningly, a bellhop who had just emailed Julian's team a full description of the incident, including names. Back outside, Julian's black SUV pulled up quietly. Not a word. He stepped in, still calm. Because in 10 minutes, Sandra and her staff wouldn't just be eating their words, they'd be signing their termination letters. The Empire was striking back. And it wasn't coming quietly. 10 minutes. That's all it took. The lobby was humming with the usual late-night rhythm, clinking glasses from the bar, guests chatting in low tones, and the quiet rustle of crisp uniforms. Sandra, still riding the high of her power trip, was sipping her overpriced latte behind the front desk, basking in what she thought was a job well done. Tyler leaned on the counter beside her, scrolling through Instagram, chuckling. Guy probably Ubered straight to a Motel 6, he muttered. But then the energy shifted. The glass doors opened. In walked Julian Carter, not alone this time. Flanking him were 2 sharply dressed executives and a uniformed security team, all moving with a quiet authority that made people straighten in their seats. The man leading them was none other than Richard Lennox, the regional director of the Carrington Group, a name that carried weight from Wall Street to Singapore. Sandra's jaw tightened. "What is he doing back here?" she hissed, stepping forward. "Excuse me, sirs, but this man has been removed." Richard cut her off without so much as a glance. "Is your name Sandra Holden?" She blinked. "Yes." He handed her a thick envelope. "Per directive from executive ownership, you are hereby placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation." Please step away from the desk. Sandra's latte slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Wait, what? Julian stepped forward, calm, hands in his pockets. He locked eyes with her. Let me introduce myself properly this time, he said, voice smooth and deliberate. Julian Carter, CEO of Carrington Holdings, owner of this hotel, and the man you had escorted off his own property. Gasps echoed through the lobby. The bellhop, Marcus, stood frozen in place, eyes wide. Tyler stumbled backward, face pale. Julian held up his phone and tapped the screen. Instantly, a projection appeared on a sleek portable display behind him. His ownership certificate, complete with his signature and date of acquisition. Still think I was loitering? He asked softly. Silence. Julian scanned the stunned faces in the lobby, his gaze razor-sharp. You judged me by my skin, my clothes, my quiet presence. You mistook humility for insignificance. That mistake ends now. He turned to his team. Let's begin. And just like that, the script flipped. The hunted had become the hunter. And Judgment Day had officially begun. The silence was suffocating. The lobby that once buzzed with dismissive laughter and quiet mockery now felt like a courtroom moments before a verdict. Julian Carter stood tall. No need for shouting, no theatrics. His mere presence, flanked by legal counsel and high-ranking executives, spoke louder than any raised voice could. Sandra, now seated off to the side by a security guard, looked like the air had been knocked from her lungs. Tyler was ghost-white, clutching the desk like it might save him. Marcus, the bellhop who had tried to speak up earlier, stood to the side, uncertain but hopeful. Julian took a slow breath and stepped forward. The staff turned to him like a jury awaiting sentence. I walked into this hotel 10 minutes ago, Julian began, his voice calm but steel-edged. And I was judged, not for my behavior, not for my reservation, not even for my words. I was judged by what I wore and the color of my skin. He paused, locking eyes with Tyler, then Sandra. And for that, every single one of you who played a role in that humiliation is terminated. Effective immediately. A sharp gasp rippled through the room. One woman burst into tears. Another tried to plead, Mr. Carter, please, I have children. Julian didn't waver. Then perhaps think of them next time before you humiliate someone who looks different from your idea of wealth. Richard, the regional director, stepped forward with a thick stack of documents. We've reviewed the footage, gathered witness statements, and spoken to employees who were too afraid to speak out before. The behavior displayed by management tonight reflects a systemic problem. One that ends now. Security staff began collecting badges, radios, and keycards. One by one, the employees who had smirked, laughed, or looked away in silence now shuffled out, fired by the very man they tried to reject. Julian turned to Marcus, the only one who'd attempted to speak up. You spoke when it mattered, he said. Report to HR tomorrow. You're being promoted. Full scholarship for hospitality training, on my tab. Marcus's eyes welled up with tears. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Julian turned back to the shell-shocked room. This hotel was built to set a new standard. That starts tonight. Respect is no longer optional here. It's policy. The cleaning had begun, not of floors, but of minds, bias, and broken systems. And Julian Carter had made one thing clear. This was his house. And he wasn't just back, he was in charge. The next morning, the internet was on fire. The incident at the Carrington Elite Hotel had exploded into the public eye, thanks to 3 guests who'd recorded the entire ordeal and posted it online under the trending hashtag #KickedOutTheCEO. The video showed everything. Julian Carter being dismissed, security escorting him out, the smug smirks of Sandra and Tyler, and then, 10 minutes later, his triumphant return with his executive team, calmly delivering justice in real time. One video alone had hit 4.3 million views in 8 hours. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. Headlines screamed across timelines. Newspaper, Black CEO removed from his own hotel, then fired entire staff in stunning power move. Newspaper, Julian Carter, the billionaire who silently watched, then swiftly struck. Julian sat in his penthouse office that morning, sipping black coffee as clips of his speech echoed across TV screens. On one talk show, a journalist exclaimed, "This is what real leadership looks like. Decisive. No yelling, no revenge, just accountability." Another anchor added, "It's not just about race, it's about assumptions, bias, and how quickly people judge based on appearance." Julian Carter exposed a truth we all need to confront. At the hotel, guests were buzzing. Some requested selfies with Marcus, the newly promoted bellhop who was now being celebrated as the one who spoke up. Others gathered in the lobby reading the public statement Carrington Holdings had framed and mounted overnight. It read, "Carrington Holdings stands against discrimination in all forms. Effective immediately, we are launching a mandatory training program across all global properties. Leadership begins with respect. Julian Carter, CEO." Even celebrities chimed in. A tweet from a Grammy-winning artist read, "Imagine being so racist, you try to kick out the guy who pays your salary. Respect black wealth. Respect black excellence." Back in the hotel's now silent staff room, discarded name tags and uniforms sat in a bin, reminders of arrogance that had cost careers. Julian's assistant entered his office. "Sir, CNN wants an exclusive interview." Julian shook his head, smiling. "Not yet. Let the footage speak. I didn't do this to trend. I did it to teach." The message was loud, viral, unforgettable. Julian Carter hadn't raised his voice, but the world had heard him anyway. And now, the hospitality industry would never be the same. 2 weeks later, the Carrington Elite Hotel didn't just look different, it felt different. Gone was the cold, polished silence of exclusion. In its place, warm greetings, diverse smiles behind the front desk, and a lobby humming with genuine hospitality, not just performance. Julian Carter hadn't just fired a staff. He had reimagined an entire system. The first thing he did was launch the Carter Initiative for Inclusive Hospitality, a paid internship and management training program for underrepresented youth. Applications flooded in from across the country. Former foster kids, young immigrants, veterans, single parents, all of them hungry for opportunity. "I want people who've been told you don't belong to run this place," Julian told his team. "We don't need perfection. We need empathy." And empathy became the new uniform. At orientation, Marcus, formerly the overlooked bellhop, was introduced as the new assistant guest services manager. His voice trembled as he stood in front of the incoming recruits. "I stayed quiet too long," he admitted. "But speaking up changed everything. Not just for me, but for all of you walking through these doors now." The hotel underwent a cultural transformation. Staff were trained not just in etiquette and luxury service, but in conscious communication, anti-bias practices, and emotional intelligence. Julian hired consultants to audit hiring practices and promotions across all Carrington properties, ensuring equity wasn't just a value, it was a standard. And then came the boldest move. Right where Sandra had once shamed him, Julian had a custom marble plaque installed in the lobby. It read, "This hotel stands on the principles of dignity, excellence, and justice. Here, respect isn't earned by what you wear, but by who you are." Julian Carter, CEO. Tourists stopped to take photos. Influencers posted it. School groups visited to study it as part of diversity programs. Even disgraced former employees tried to reapply, only to receive polite rejections. The door had closed. The future had arrived. Julian strolled through the renovated lobby one afternoon, watching new trainees guide a group of international guests with pride and poise. He paused, taking it all in, the new energy, the new mission, the new faces who belonged. "This," he murmured to himself, "is what rebuilding looks like. Not revenge. Restoration." And he wasn't finished yet. It was a crisp Friday morning when Julian Carter returned, not as the CEO, not for an inspection, but as a guest. Dressed once again in that same gray hoodie and sneakers, he stepped through the revolving doors of the Carrington Elite Hotel just as he had weeks before. Except this time, the moment felt entirely different. He wasn't ignored. He wasn't doubted. He was welcomed, with reverence. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," said a young woman at the front desk, her voice warm, her eyes shining with admiration. "Your penthouse suite is ready, and Marcus will escort you personally." Julian smiled. "Appreciate it." Marcus appeared from the elevator, dressed sharply in his new managerial uniform, a subtle gold lapel pin gleaming on his jacket. He extended his hand, shaking Julian's with quiet pride. "Sir, it's an honor." Julian looked him over and nodded. "No, Marcus, the honor is mine. You spoke up. That's leadership." As they ascended in the glass elevator, the city skyline stretched around them. Inside the penthouse, a bouquet of white orchids and a handwritten note awaited. "Welcome home, Mr. Carter. Thank you for reminding us what excellence truly looks like." "Your new team." Julian stood by the window, watching the busy world below, remembering how it all began. The judgmental glances, the humiliation, the disbelief that someone like him could own something so elite. But now, the hotel thrived not in spite of his presence, but because of it. Later that evening, Julian attended a private dinner held in the rooftop lounge, now rebranded as Elevation, a nod to rising above adversity. Staff, investors, and new trainees mingled with laughter and clinking glasses. Stories were shared. Journeys celebrated. During his toast, Julian raised a glass of sparkling water and said, "Power isn't just about owning a building. It's about what you do when that power is tested. When you're disrespected, humiliated, underestimated, and you respond with vision, not vengeance." He looked around at the faces, black, brown, white, immigrant, LGBTQ+, disabled, all belonging. "I was kicked out of this hotel once. But I didn't walk away. I walked back in, with purpose. And together, we built something no one could ignore." The crowd erupted in applause. Julian took a quiet breath, stepped out onto the balcony, and whispered to himself, "Full circle." This time, he wasn't returning to prove a point. He was returning to enjoy the legacy he had already written. They judged him by his clothes. They dismissed him because of his skin. But they forgot one thing: he owned the building they worked in. Julian Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't beg for respect. He walked out with grace, and returned with power. Because true success doesn't scream. It signs the paychecks. It changes the culture. It rewrites the rules. And when it speaks, the whole world listens. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a statement. Respect isn't requested. It's required.